What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most highly anticipated films of the year, a follow-up to one of the biggest films of 2024, and that film is called Wicked for Good. Once again directed by John M. Chu, this film once again stars people like Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, Jonathan Bailey, Michelle Yeoh, Jeff Goldblum, and many more. And for anybody who's newer to the channel or doesn't know who I am, I talked about it last year when I covered the first Wicked film, but yeah, I've always been a big fan of this story. As a kid, I was a huge fan of The Wizard of Oz, thanks to my mom, though I did make fun of it quite a bit when she first tried to get me into it. But Wicked itself is a play that I did get to see on stage when I was a teenager, and as a teenager when I was in high school, I had some friends who were really into stage plays, really into Broadway, who ended up having us do like a school production of Wicked that I was a part of, which is where I was first properly introduced to most of the music and the characters, and even the fact that this was a prequel of sorts to The Wizard of Oz that kind of like remixes things. So I have a lot of nostalgia for Wicked because of that. It takes me back to high school days. I remember seeing it on stage for the first time and being blown away. I talked about this already in my review for the first Wicked film, so I won't sit here and talk your ear off on all that again. But as usual, guys, let's talk about what this film is all about first, and then we'll get into my thoughts on the film. Wicked for Good continues the adaptation of the iconic Broadway musical, picking up directly after the cliffhanger conclusion of Wicked Part 1 from last year. As Oz plunges deeper into political chaos, Elphaba's reputation is further weaponized by the wizard's regime. Meanwhile, Glinda rises in public influence and must reckon with the price of her own ambition. Relationships fracture, alliances shift, and the truth behind Elphaba's fate moves into focus as the story approaches the legendary For Good finale. And I'm happy to start off this review by saying I really enjoyed Wicked for Good. I was really highly anticipating this film, as I think a lot of people were, and a big reason for that was not only everything I already shared about my attachment to this story and the nostalgia around it for me, and I'm sure many others, but also because the last film I thought was great. I loved it, and it was, I think, number 3 on my ranking of my favorite films from last year, which was pretty good given the fact that every year I see a few hundred movies. So yeah, loved that film last year, and so I was really excited and really hoping that they would stick the landing. Now, full transparency, I do have some gripes with this film, and a lot of that comes from some of my worries that I had going into the film that did kind of come to fruition for me ever so slightly. But I do want to start this off by giving it mostly praise. I want to let you guys know I really enjoyed this film, so if you're excited about checking out Wicked for Good, you're going to enjoy a lot about it. But I am still here to critique the film because I love doing that. I love talking about film, breaking things down, and I recognize that there's going to be some people who don't care whatsoever. They just want to watch this film because they love this story, they love the music, and they just want to see it on the big screen. And for those people, I think you're really going to walk away from this film with a smile either way. But if you're coming here for a movie review, I am going to talk about a couple things that I didn't like, but I will say this will be a spoiler-free review. But if you've seen the stage play, you already know what to kind of expect here. Now, one issue that I was worried about going into this film is that I always felt that the first half of the Wicked story, which I should mention that the entirety of the first movie is about the length of the stage play. So when I heard they were splitting it into 2 movies, I was a little bit worried they weren't going to be able to handle it well, or they were going to stretch things out a little too much. And I think for the most part, that first film did a great job of taking that first half of the story and ending it right where the intermission would be in the actual stage play. And now I was curious to see how they would pick it up here, because I do think that the first part of the Wicked story has some of the best story beats, has some of the best character moments, character dynamics, and has some of the best songs. And so I was curious to see how they would handle this latter half. And so I do think there was a couple issues in the story and jumping straight into the middle of the story here. And there's a couple of things that feel like they're just trying to get things wrapped up so we can get to the finale. But all in all, I think that this film has all of the positives that the first film had, most notably being the cast. The cast here is great once again, with of course Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande being the front and center stars of this movie, and I thought they were great. The chemistry between the two of them, the charming moments, but also the heartbreaking moments, all work really, really well, and the two of them clearly have a lot of deep connection. If you've seen any of the red carpet stuff or interviews, they've been teased by many, but many also love their connection. And you know, for me, I don't care either way. I'm not here to tease them, but I love seeing how connected that they are in all those interviews and stuff like that, even if it seems like a little bit too much at times. And all of that really comes out in droves in the film. You can definitely see that connection between the two of them. They definitely have that chemistry. And so when there are moments that really tug at the heartstrings, it works so well, especially as you get to the finale of this movie. And I was really happy with how all of that was handled between the two of them. The rest of the returning cast is great. Jonathan Bailey is a huge highlight here once again. Jeff Goldblum is great, bringing that charm. But if you know anything about the Wizard of Oz, you know, he's a bit of a sleazeball. And so Jeff Goldblum does a good job of playing that part here as well. And you have Michelle Yeoh in the film and tons of other fantastic stars in the film that I do think all show up to play, so the cast is great. And similarly, just like the first film, one of my favorite things about it was the production of it all. The costumes, the sets, the hair, the makeup, the CGI. I loved how colorful and vibrant that film was in so many ways, and this film is no different. I would say my only real gripe with this film, which was something that I did have a bit of a gripe with in the first one, but it felt a little bit more noticeable here, were just certain moments of the green screen that did feel very much like our actresses were just standing on a green screen. And so it wasn't something that ruined the movie for me at all, but it was something that stood out as like, that doesn't look as good as it probably could. But outside of that, I think the rest of the production here is great. And then you have the musical numbers. One thing to note going into this is they did add a few new musical numbers that are not in the stage play. So there are going to be some differences that you should expect if you are very familiar with the stage play. But outside of that, I think the music is handled well here. I enjoyed the new songs that were included. The vocal performances across the board are fantastic. And I don't think that's going to be a big surprise to most people. Cynthia, Erivo, Ariana Grande are great singers, and the rest of the cast, Jonathan Bailey has some great pipes in this movie as well. And so yeah, outside of them, I would say, you know, maybe Jeff Goldblum singing is more cutesy and fun than it is like truly operatic and, you know, really talent heavy, in the same way that you have like Cynthia Erivo or Ariana Grande, who are just like belting incredible vocals in this film. But yeah, the music is good, the production is great, and all those elements that you want in terms of the look and the feel of when the world of Oz is very much present here. And so John M. Chu definitely worked with his team to make this film look, feel, and sound great, outside of a couple minor gripes, like I said, around some of the green screen, which for me is not going to ruin a film by any stretch of the imagination. Now, when it comes down to the story, there are moments of this film that work. And if you know the story of Wicked, you know what that latter half of the story after the intermission is all about. Some of the most emotional beats in the story are present there. And I think that when this film really leans into those moments, when the cast is at their best, when the writing is at its best, it's emotional, it's exciting to watch, consistently gripping to the screen. And so that's when the film is really at its strongest. However, I was worried that they were going to kind of struggle with what I think a lot of stories that are split into two parts struggle with, which is just kind of like, how do you start off that second story? When we've seen certain books be turned into movies that get split into two, or in the case of this, a stage play, there is an element about it that feels like you're just kind of being thrown into something that doesn't really have its own real beginning, middle, and end. I think the first movie did a great job of taking the middle of the stage play, but building up to it where there is a big beginning, middle, and climactic ending that leaves you on a cliffhanger. And here it feels very much like you are getting more of the end of a story and less so of a movie in and of itself. And so I think that is something that might turn some people off. I've already seen some slight mixed reviews from some people. It seems like most people are enjoying the film, and I'm definitely in that camp. But there was a part of my brain while I was watching it that just felt like something about the pacing and the way the story was kind of playing out at the very beginning did feel a little all over the place. It did feel like they were like, okay, we kind of need to set the table here. We need to set the chessboard, if you will. There are a bunch of characters that need to be pretty integral to the latter part of the film that we need to have a couple of sequences in just to kind of get us there, but not because those characters ever really were characters in and of themselves in this movie. And so at times there was this part of my brain that just kept thinking, I'm enjoying watching this, but would this have been better if they just made the first film longer, trimmed out a couple of things, and really just compacted this into a maybe over 3-hour movie? I know some people maybe are turned off at that idea altogether, but given the fact that the stage play is 2 hours and some change, the same runtime of the first film, I do kind of feel like making this film an over 3-hour film and combining what we had here, or the best bits of what we had here, with that first film really could have streamlined a couple of things, making it feel a little bit more cohesive. Whereas if you're going into this movie as a sequel and just as a movie in and of itself, it does feel like the flow at the beginning of the film to kind of like set the table for the finale does feel a little choppy. It's a little bit, we're going over here, we're going over there, we're going over here, we're going over there. Mind you, I already know where the story is going, so I see what they're doing, but just from an editing perspective and the way that the story was chopped up, it did sometimes just feel a little bit messy. Now, of course, one of the best parts of the Wicked storyline is how it starts to kind of cross over with the Wizard of Oz storyline with Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion, Tin Man, Scarecrow, all that jazz. And so I was really excited to see how they were going to integrate that element here into the film. And I would say similarly to the stage play, where it does feel kind of like they expect that you already know about Dorothy and the events of the Wizard of Oz. It does kind of feel like you are seeing cliff notes of that storyline that are just kind of happening amidst the story of Wicked. And for the most part, I think that works if you're somebody like myself who is familiar with Wizard of Oz and you've seen the Wicked stage play. But I have talked to quite a few friends who never saw Wizard of Oz and just went to go see Wicked last year because of all the hype around it. And I think if you're one of those people and you watch this film, I do think there is a kind of a disservice kind of thrown at you guys. Dorothy and those characters aren't really characters in this film in and of themselves, outside of a couple of them. I don't want to spoil anything, but it doesn't really feel like they really expand upon the Wizard of Oz story in this movie. It just kind of feels like we're jumping around to the cliff note big moments of that story, and more often than not, characters like Dorothy are just characters you see from the behind or like a silhouette of the character. And so it does kind of feel like if you haven't seen Wizard of Oz, you're going to be like, what is going on with Dorothy and this other group of characters that we aren't really spending time with, but we keep hearing about, and there is a central focus with them near the end, but it doesn't really feel like the movie spends time with them. And this is one of those moments that where I think an adaptation from stage to screen could have done a really great job of expanding upon that, maybe redoing sequences from the Wizard of Oz in a new way and kind of incorporating it into this story in a really integral manner, whereas it does feel very much like they are just kind of backdrop cliff note things that are integral to the Wicked storyline, but at the same time don't feel like they get enough screen time to really feel as impactful as I feel they should. Mind you though, I am a fan of Wizard of Oz. I'm already familiar with the story, so I didn't feel left out, but as I was watching it, it did just kind of feel like something that was tacked in there that might leave some viewers out if they aren't as familiar with the Wizard of Oz, or if they've just flat out never seen it and just jumped on for Wicked and now Wicked for Good. Still, despite those gripes, I found this film to be a lot of fun to watch. It's engaging, it's visually stunning, the cast is great, the musical numbers work, there's great emotional beats, some cute moments of romance that are really going to work for a lot of people. It's something that I think changes certain little beats and little songs here and there from the stage play, so I don't think purists will be the happiest, but I think at the same time it still stays true to the heart and legacy of the stage play while doing its own thing to kind of cement this adaptation as its own thing. I didn't love it as much as I did the first film. I would say that the first Wicked is damn near perfect and leaves you on a real high with the Defying Gravity finale. And I think the finale of this film is very touching and very engaging, and I like the way it connected into the story of the Wizard of Oz. But there was something about that earlier part of the film and just kind of setting the table that did feel a little disjointed. I think that there was something about the way the story was structured that I do think sometimes separating stories like this can do a disservice to the second film. It doesn't always happen. There are some films that have been able to do it very well. I would say like the Deathly Hallows films from Harry Potter are probably some of the best examples of splitting a story up and really nailing it with the two films. But in the case of this movie, all in all, I think people are mostly going to be very pleased with it. I think if you're a fan of Wicked and you don't even care about all these critical elements and you just want to watch a story that you love on screen and hear songs and the production of it all, then you're going to have a great time. But if you're like me and you enjoy the songs and the story beats of the first part of the Wicked story more, you may leave this film thinking that was a lot of fun, but I didn't love it as much as the first one, but it ends in a very satisfying way. So that's my long rambly review on Wicked for Good, and more than anything, I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. Where do you agree with me? Where do you disagree with me? Where do you not even care with what I gotta say? Or maybe you stand with me, maybe you didn't like the movie at all. Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.